Hello.
Hi, everyone. This is Norman Kochnick here on Eyes on Cricket with Norman Kochnick. And if I sometimes start to laugh, it's only because I have two of my favorite friends on screen who are going to make me laugh probably endlessly all day. They are, you can see them on screen, but their names are both Julie and Jim Farbaniec. They are actually based in Mission Viejo, I think I got that right, in California.
Southern California.
Southern California is okay.
We'll get it right later. It sounds like a part of the anatomy, but I won't go there. So, the fact is that Mission Viejo is in fact in California.
Yeah, it is.
It's getting closer and closer to San Diego. It's near Irvine.
In between San Diego and LA.
Between San Diego and LA. These two lovely people are based there. And we decided, we had a chat, we're friends, and we decided, let's do something about cricket because they're in America. And I'll say it up front that the second biggest audience in the world for cricket, second biggest obviously is India by a country mile, but the second biggest audience in the world for cricket is actually the US of A, which is quite remarkable.
No idea.
Yeah, that is in fact the case.
No idea.
So I would have thought India.
You just said India.
Oh, after India.
Yeah, India's
first. I'm focusing now.
No, you're not focusing. India's first, second is America. And actually the second biggest sport in the world behind soccer is actually cricket.
What?
In terms of audience. In terms of audience size, because of the likes of India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, they've got hundreds of millions in some cases.
Where does New Zealand rank in the popularity of cricket?
Well, they've only got 3 million people in the country, so it's going to have troubles matching numbers. But New Zealand is very significant in the cricket world. In fact, they've already made the World Test Championship. They're going to be in July. They're going to be at Lords in England. They're going to be playing against possibly either India, Australia, or England in the World Test Championship. So New Zealand's already qualified. So they're a big deal. Absolutely.
What about, Norm, can you just share that famous cricket match between Australia and New Zealand when the two brothers were bowling, and instead of giving the New Zealand batsman a chance, he rolled it on the ground? Can you explain that? We
will get to that, but that's going to take some explanation. That's episode 3 or 4, by the way. So let's not jump the gun.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, Jim lies when he says he doesn't know anything about cricket. He's actually played a game of cricket in Australia. He caught the ball at gully, and he's also played in the backyard with me and my son in his place in California.
I am the one that knows very little.
Exactly. Julie knows very little, but we'll probably learn quicker than Jim about the other rules, but I won't go there. The reality is this show is going to be one of many, I hope, where we're going to have a lot of fun exploring cricket. Now, I know most of the people watching this are cricket aficionados. They know all about cricket. But it's kind of amusing to bring cricket back to a common denominator of someone who doesn't know about it and actually seeing where it came from, because it's amazing. I mean, I didn't know fully about how baseball and cricket came about. I would have thought cricket was first and baseball followed. Well, that's effectively what happened. But there was a game called Rounders. There's all sorts of games that were also included. So we're going to talk more about that. We're going to get to the structure in a minute. Just to let you know, Jim and Julie, there are people's names on the side. Can you see that? There's quite a few of me.
No, wait. Let me exit full screen. Okay.
And there are names there.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So people will be making comments through the session, depending on how things go. And they'll...
Okay. Cool.
So they'll generally make comments.
Okay.
So Jim and Julie are your typical Americans. They love their baseball. They made it very clear to me at the start they're not a fan of Donald Trump.
No, I need that to be clear. We did not vote for Trump.
No worries. Well, that's clear. That's clear.
Okay.
So although Donald Trump doesn't play cricket, so we don't want to worry about Trump with cricket. We have things called Stumps, but not Trump. So Stumps, not Trump. Okay, so we have Stumps, which will
good one, Norm.
But we don't want to focus on politics. We want to focus on the basics of cricket.
Correct. I'm going to be
Right.
shaking my head a lot.
Norman, you're going to regret this.
I'm going to be shaking a lot around this time. So yeah, okay. This is about people that are coming online. Jim and Julie are from California in America. Majority of our viewers are Indian, but we have a lot of American viewers as well, expatriates of various countries. We have obviously a smattering of Sri Lankans, Indians, many Indians,
Cheers.
Pakistanis. Cheers! I'll cheers at having a glass of red wine. A lot of people from Bangladesh, obviously Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. We've got quite a diverse group of people, but America is quite a large slice of that. And America being the second biggest audience in the world for cricket, and cricket being the second biggest watched sport in the world, below soccer. So it's putting in context. So we
Who is that famous cricketer called Bradman?
So you're going to let it have to, it's his show.
Bradman.
Everyone just watch me. There'll be occasions when I'll tell Jim I'll probably shake my head like that and I'll go, Jim, shut up. But I'll try and get that from him.
Yeah. I think it's Sharon. I saw his name. This is an Oregon Pinot. Sorry, we're not drinking Australian wine.
That's fine.
We'll plan better next time.
Okay, wonderful. Can you just put those bottles in? Okay. All right, thank you. Bottles down, glasses down. Okay, so the reality is that we're teaching Americans how to play cricket and the rules of cricket. They know baseball very, very well because baseball is clearly a match which is played with a bat and a ball. And the concept of baseball, as they would be able to tell me, the reality was with baseball, you have a diamond-shaped area, and the person who was the batter, as you would call it, would hit the ball into the area which is in front of the wicket, in front of the base, sorry, the home base, in front of where the catcher is. And if they hit it behind that magical line, it's a foul ball. It doesn't count. So that's a significant thing in American, as in baseball. But that's one of the, and obviously that's a significant thing in baseball. But in cricket, the entire field in all directions is not out of bounds. It's actually, let's call it inbounds. So you have the difference between baseball and cricket straight away. Baseball has
a pitch. It's a pitch.
Is it equal? Like if I'm in the middle, is it equal distance to the edge, or is it like an oval? Or
well, it really depends. Many grounds have got different shapes and dimensions because some of them are extremely old and they've kept the original features. Some are very long and narrow. Some are perfectly surrounded. More modern venues tend to be more surrounded. Some are adopted from football, so they're a lot narrower. There's all sorts of. There's not a specific must-be size to the ground. It does vary, so it's a bit different to baseball in that regard. But it's on a grass green field, as you would have. You have a form of, like we call it a pitch, but you have bases where there's dirt around it. We have a form of grass pitch, which is laid in a certain manner where it almost looks like something other than grass, and that's very flat and there's very much away, and that can deviate, they can change. Balls can hit a certain spot and go one way, hit the ball and go the other way, because in cricket, unlike baseball, the ball can bounce. Baseball generally it's on the full, isn't it, when you pitch. You don't.
What do they call the ball in cricket?
Well, it's a cricket ball.
Is that the official name? Cricket ball?
A cricket ball, correct. And the cricket ball can be
two words. Cricket ball. Two words.
It can be either red in color, or it can be more commonly when it's day night matches, it's now pink in color. If it's a one-day form of the game, it can be a white color. So it can vary in color, although the actual makeup of the ball is generally the same. It's got a cork hardened base with a form of string around the cork, and then over the top it's overlaid by leather, which is stitched, and that's quite a specific type of ball. There are various versions of it, but yeah, the baseball is also a form of bound ball, isn't it, with stitching, but it's a lot bigger in shape, probably a lot softer in shape, not as hard as what the cricket ball is. But in essence, the grounds are very similar looking. You have, as I said to you, the foul line where you can either be in or out of play. Cricket, the entire ground is in play effectively. You hit home runs. We would argue if we hit a ball out of the ground like you do in baseball, it's effectively an automatic 6 runs.
6
runs. So
it's 4 points if it rolls on the ground to the outer boundary.
Correct.
Is that right?
Correct. But it doesn't have to roll on the ground. It can only bounce once and go over.
What if it bounces over? Is that still 4?
That's still 4. It's not 6.
It's only 6 if it's in the air.
Correct. Not unlike a baseball home run, let's call it.
Right.
So there's some fundamental differences. We have innings, like you have innings. In baseball, you have innings, don't you? Every team has an innings. They, in fact, have 9 in baseball.
Correct.
In cricket, we have, depending on the format of the game, either 1 or 2. 1 being what we call the 50-over format, or the T20 format, which I'll get to later. Or we have Test cricket, or the longer version of cricket, which can be as long as 5 days, perhaps as little as whatever the match goes, and that would be 2 innings. So we have a maximum of 2 innings, or a minimum of 1 innings. Okay, so baseball is straight
2
9.
innings goes for 5 days.
Sorry?
2 innings goes for 5 days.
Potentially.
That seems crazy. But
The one-day matches have 1 inning or 2 innings?
Well, they have 1 innings from a team and 1 innings from the other side. So effectively, 1 from both sides.
Right.
In Test cricket, you have 2 from both sides, which makes 4.
Got it.
As a
And
maximum.
an inning means everybody bats. Like
Exactly.
however many are on the team, everyone goes through, no matter what.
Well, it's not no matter what. There are some quirks to that, but effectively 11 players on either side, and 11 players have the opportunity to bat on both sides. They may not be needed in some cases when the early batters go really, really, really well. They may what they call declare and not need the latter batsman if their score is sufficient. That's possible, but they can bat up to 11 players, which means 10 people are out.
Do bowlers bat too?
Sorry?
Are bowlers also batsmen?
Absolutely.
Oh.
Absolutely.
Bowler's the pitcher, right?
Who's the most famous bowler batsman in Australian history?
Now, when you say bowler batsman, you mean all-rounder. We call them all-rounders. People are both batters and bowlers, or bats. We still use the term batsman, which is very non-neutral. It's very much about a male, but we tend to say now batters more often, but we do use the term batsman. A person who bats and bowls as their position in the team are called all-rounders. And probably the most famous all-rounder ever would have to be a man by the name of Sir Garfield Sobers, who played for the West Indies, who's still alive. For India, for example, it would be perhaps a Kapil Dev. He was a very well-known, he won a World Cup, the shorter form of the game. So, they're saying the name Bumrah, which is Jasprit Bumrah, is certainly one of the best bowlers. He's probably not one of the best batters. So he's not necessarily an all-rounder. He's probably
Shane
more
Warne wasn't an all-rounder, was he?
Sorry?
Shane Warne wasn't an all-rounder. He was just a great bowler.
No idea.
Yeah, he probably thought he probably would like to call himself an all-rounder, but he didn't quite get there. He did score some very significant runs, but he wasn't quite. He was a very handy batter, but wasn't necessarily deemed to be an all-rounder. So, for example, we talked about cricket balls earlier. That's the typical leather ball of a cricket ball. You can see the stitching there very heavily there. In fact, they normally call it a 6-stitcher, normally 3 and 3.
You don't want that in your face.
And that's a leather bound. That's the leather ball. They have a version which is also the white ball, which is used for one-day cricket, the shorter version. With 1 innings for each side. That's a very similar ball to that. And they have a ball which is probably not quite the pink that I'm thinking of. This is more of an orange, but there's a pink version of this. I think I'm colorblind. That's actually not pink, that's orange. But again, it's got an autograph on it. But that ball actually...
Do we have a rainbow colored ball? I'd like to see a rainbow colored ball.
We haven't got a rainbow colored ball.
Inclusion for everyone. That's what I'd like to see.
Jim, we don't use rainbow. Just get it clear. Jim will occasionally throw it out.
Not yet. Rainbow balls next.
No, Jim. There's no rainbow colour balls. Okay. Obviously, these balls hurt when they hit you. I can assure you. We use padding. Baseballers don't use a lot of padding, do they? The batters don't use much. They use a helmet, of course, on one side. We're more into the conventional full helmets. We've got arm guards, pads on our legs, which cover our actual knees and knees and shins. We have gloves, we have chest guards, we have quite a few other guards that are appropriate to parts of the body. But we've had a helmet probably for the last maybe 20 or 30, probably more 30 years now. Prior to that, there were very few helmets. I didn't wear a helmet when I played when I was younger. These days, it's almost mandatory.
It's showing now. The lack of helmet.
Shut up.
I'll just ignore that.
Carmen, are
comment.
you regretting this?
Yeah,
Are you
please, everyone. Occasionally, you have to ignore Jim. Just ignore him. He'll be facetious, is the word I would use. All right. So now back to the game. We've got back to the game. We baseball essentially may have the same grass field. It may have a bowler and a batter, or a pitcher and a catcher and a hitter. Exactly. We have similar concepts there, but that's when it starts to become quite different. You have bases where players hit the ball and run to and stay and move along, and eventually could get a home run based on what they do. In cricket, we have more than one batter in at one time. You only have the one that's actually hitting, and that's it for him. We actually have two, and they are on what is 66 feet or 22 yards, I think the approximate measurements are, is what an area in the middle, which is usually a slightly different colour than the rest of the field, usually a lighter colour. That's actually called a cricket pitch. And that cricket pitch at that length I described to you, which is about 22 yards, we have sets of what we call, basically they're pieces of wood. They can be metal these days. They're three what we call stumps. You may have seen them. They have one, they're hit into the ground. They're three pieces of wood. I haven't got an example of one here, but they are three. They're called stumps, individual stumps.
What's that little video you sent?
And
so I
those
saw
little wooden things on top are called bales.
Exactly. They're called bales. So there you've got your three stumps made generally out of wood, but can be out of metal these days. And they have the two bales, which have got a little ringlet in the middle, and they sit nicely. They're grooved, and they sit onto the top of the stumps like that. And at 1, 2, 3, and they sit there, and that becomes effectively the wicket. It's called the wicket. Okay, so three stumps and two bales, actually termed to be the wicket, and you have two wickets on either end. Okay, and two batters on either end, and you have a bowler, as you would call a pitcher, and that bowler comes in starting point from one end and bowls to a batter. Not unlike baseball.
What happens if the batter blocks the wickets?
That's okay. He can block the wicket as much as he wants. But we'll get to that later about the dismissal, but what you're getting to is whether the ball hits you in front. We'll get to that later. So effectively, we've got three stumps at both ends and two bales on top of those three stumps at both ends, and that's 22 yards apart. We have an area where the batter can stand when he's batting. It's called the crease. There's a line in front. So
like lacrosse. Lacrosse has a crease, I think, doesn't it?
Well, no. So the crease. You know how you have a crease in your jacket? The crease is a line. Well, it's actually a line which is an actual boundary of the actual. It's actually termed the popping crease, which is an unusual term. But you have the stumps and this line, and this line in front where the batter can stand. Are you listening, guys? So
yes.
You have the stance where the stumps are, and then the actual crease, and they stand within that zone when they're batting. And that crease becomes really important at both ends, because when a batter bats, he then has the ability to hit the ball, and can then, if the person hits the ball in any direction, they have the ability to run. A run means both batsmen cross and they go to each other's positions effectively. They pass the crease. Once they've done that, when they both go to other ends, that's called one run.
Okay.
And they run back again, that's two runs.
What if they don't cross the crease in time?
They must be at both ends. They tap the bat at one end, they tap the bat, like they get the bat and they tap it or slide it, and then they can then run for the next run. That's effectively one run. When both batters cross and they reach other points, that is called a run.
And then, so a home run caps it at 6, you said?
Well, a home run
go more than 6? Like, what if someone does an error or something, you keep running or something?
No. Once it's over the boundary, it stops. It's either bounces and goes for 4, or it goes over the top. It's 6. There is a peculiar point that I won't bring up right now where you may get an extra run based on something that the bowler does, but we'll talk about that later. Making it simple, you hit the ball to the boundary fence, to the very end of it's either a rope or a fence or some marcation. That'll be 4 of the bounces. If it goes over the boundary, it's a 6. And that's runs. And again, baseball similarities are there because you say home run. Interesting, we use the same term. Okay, and when you go to different bases, they're not called anything other. You're just at first, second, or third base. You make a run when you actually finish the full go around. Ours is slightly different. It's based on just crossing and reaching the other end. That's one run.
So, for example, Norm, so these are the two batsmen, right? This is a batsman. He hits the ball. They cross. That's one. They cross again. That's two.
Yep.
They cross again. That's three, right?
Yep.
And then if the ball gets thrown and knocks the bails off before they cross the line, that's an out.
Correct.
Right?
I was. If you let me talk, I was going to get to that. You're jumping
No,
the gun. You're one of these
video.
students. You're one of these students that do, basic maths like division or multiplying, and then you jump to sine and cosine or some sort of square root or something. You just have to wait till we get to that class.
Okay.
He's not good at waiting.
Norm, you're doing great.
You're a very impatient student. I must just let you know. It's very unfortunate, but it is a fact. Okay,
That's fair.
let's go back to where we were talking about. We have the ability to have a run by running between the wickets, crossing and going to the crease line, or you can make it very easy for yourself and hit the ball out of the ground for 6 and you don't have to run at all, or hit it to the boundary for 4 and you don't have to run at all. And a lot of batsmen actually do that. Who can do that? There's one particular player, Inzamam Al-Haq, who played for Pakistan. He was notorious for just standing and delivering. He didn't have to run. Why should he? Because he was getting a lot of runs from his hits. Okay. So we've got a comment from MNSTA with explaining with a live video. That's what we're going to do next. We're going to talk generally through this. My intention was to have a very general chat, work it through, and then we'll be very practical down the track. So don't worry, guys. I'm aware of that. I believe for this, to make it interactive with the people on the phones, on the actual on the area next to me, we can talk to you, we can talk to the people, and have it in that manner rather than necessarily showing it. But we will have a live demonstration. We'll actually go into later episodes. We'll actually go into the full
audience can ask us questions and see if we get it right or wrong.
Exactly.
And you can jump in and explain it.
So that's exactly right. So I'm in lecture mode at the moment. You're in student mode, and you will then be able to interact, and you'll be tested. And we'll get the viewers.
That will take 5 days.
Questions. I'm going to get the viewers to ask questions of you, and I'm going to repeat their questions. Okay. All right. So the reality is, and I'm going very generally through things to give a bit of an overview. Again, the batters run, and they score runs. So there are, don't forget, 11 players.
Okay.
2 out there at that particular point in time, but another 9 waiting to come in. So that's the way they score runs. Now, when a bowler bowls, your question would generally be, how do you get somebody out?
Yes.
Baseball, it's 3 strikes, you're out.
Yep.
You get caught in the outfield.
Mm-hmm.
What are the ways can you get out in baseball?
That's basically it, right? Like the outfielders would catch it, or if they were trying to
In the air.
hit if they were trying to hit the base, they could be thrown out at one of the bases. So the ball and the infielder tags them out. So that's another
effectively. Okay, so we have very similar dismissals. We don't have 3 strikes at all. We only have really 1 strike. If you do something which is not miss the ball, you can miss the ball 1,000,000 times. It won't matter. Like, 3 strikes, you're out. You can miss the ball 300 times. It won't matter. You don't get out. The only time you get out, first and foremost, the obvious one is when you're caught. Not unlike baseball, hit the ball, caught on the full, that's out. But you can be caught behind. The catcher or the keeper can catch you behind as well. In baseball, I think
You can.
If you hit the ball above and goes
Behind you,
and the catcher catches, you're out, correct?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
They can catch a foul ball,
Yeah,
and
so
the foul that would be out. That's correct.
Okay. Well, that's similar to cricket. You can hit the ball anywhere. If you're caught within the boundaries of the ground, you're out. Caught.
Right.
That's one obvious dismissal. You can also be, as you described it, out when you throw the ball to the first baseman and he takes the ball, and that's all he needs to do, doesn't he? He doesn't have to touch the runner, I don't think. He just has to catch the ball and be on the base.
His foot has to be on the base, and then so basically the the pitcher throws the ball across the plate or around the plate. The batter hits it. If it's on the ground, he starts running towards first base. If they throw the ball to the first baseman who catches it before he touches the base, the batter is out.
Okay. Well, in cricket, we don't have bases. We don't have bases. We have stumps. Those 3 wooden stumps are described as the bails. So what happens is at either end, there are 2 batters. One may have hit it, but both ends become in play. So if the ball's thrown to either end and the person's out of there, as I described, their crease, the line which they've got to be close to the stumps, if they're not there and the ball is taken by the keeper or a fielder, and they, in their case, it's not just a matter of catching it. They have to catch it and then knock the stump or the bail off. The little bails. So you have to actually remove that or knock them off. And if they're not in their crease, they're out. Not unlike baseball, the difference being you just catch, have your foot on the base. In this case, you catch, but you must hit the stumps, almost like hitting the base with the ball.
Has it ever happened where somebody's hit the stump and one bail still stays on?
One bail still stays on is still out.
Okay.
Do I say that again? So if the
one bail stays on.
The catcher before they're running back and forth, the catcher knocks the stump. And then how many bails are there? 2? 2. What if one gets knocked off and one's still on?
That's out.
It's out.
That's out.
Is that the only way you get out? Or what if you're I guess if you catch it, it's already out. But what if it was like a rolling hit, right? And it bounces and you're in the infield, can you throw it at the stumps and take somebody out that way?
Yes. We haven't, sorry?
That's only, she's saying, so that a bowler in cricket throws the ball, the batsman hits it, and then they start to run. That's the only time you can throw it at the wickets.
Well, you can throw it any time, but the only time you can get them out is when they're out of the crease.
Yeah,
correct. It's the term double play, which is a baseball term.
Yeah.
We basically haven't got that in cricket. I've not seen anyone get out that way, quite frankly, but we haven't got that way. So all right, we've got the catch. We call it run out. You call it a base run out. We have those 2 dismissals. Then it gets a bit more complicated. We have those 3 pieces of wood I described to you before with the bails. Now, if you miss the ball in baseball, if you miss it 3 times, if it's within your range, it's called a strike. You're out after the 3rd time. Well, in cricket, if you miss the ball and it hits those wooden stumps and the bail falls off,
you're out.
You're out. That's it. No 3 strikes. Could be the very first ball.
So when you're batting, it's both offensive and defensive then, right? Because you're trying to protect. Okay.
But you could swing and miss the ball and it doesn't knock the bail off the stumps and you're still in. You're not out.
Exactly. Correct. So that's another form of dismissal. It's called bowled. Okay, so we've talked about caught, run out, bowled. There are many other versions of outs, which I'll get into more later. But the other simplistic one is you can also get caught off the bat, right? But you can also get caught off the glove as well. If the glove is holding the bat, the glove's in play.
Right.
That's also out of that, even if it nicks it, even if it slightly touches it. So the other dismissal, which gets a little bit complicated, is what they call LBW, the words leg before wicket. So from roughly your knee down to your foot is an area where you'll usually have a pad on both legs. And generally in that region, the ball hits that pad without touching the bat. And it's deemed by the umpire to be in front of those 3 stumps. It's given out. Leg before wicket. In other words, you can't stop the ball with your pad and be not out. You can be out, potentially.
Interesting.
Do bowlers ever aim for the pads?
A bowler have the aim for the pads. Not
Do bowlers ever specifically aim for the pads? Like try to
leg
the ball hits them in their leg versus...
Well, if it hits from the pad leg and that's in front of the wicket, that's out. If it's deemed to be in front of the wicket. But it gets really a little bit more technical than that.
But if it's not in front of the wicket, they're not out.
It's possible to be in front of the wicket and not out because maybe when it actually passes the pad and goes to the stumps, it's deemed that it would have missed. You could be in front of the stumps, right? You could be in front of the wickets in front,
Right.
But because you're so far down, or the ball is bouncing quite high, it's possible that it might hit low, but it's on the way up and may actually miss the stumps. So that comes through video replays. They have a certain way that they can detect that. So the umpire makes the decision, then they go upstairs and they have another look at it to see whether through the technical process it's actually seen to hit the stumps. But that's another part. So yeah. So tell me how you can get out in cricket. You tell me.
So you get out with the catch.
Yep.
You get out if somebody knocks over the wickets.
Only
As a
when
run out?
the runners are running back and forth and they're out of the crease.
I still don't get what the crease is, actually.
So the crease is two lines, right? So there's two lines.
It's like is the crease like
A line.
the line?
And you've got to be behind, in the crease or out of the crease, which means if you're in the crease, that means you're actually between the stumps, those wooden pieces, and this line. It's an area where you stand, and you have to be on that side of it. And there's more technicality, but that's...
Okay. I just pulled it up on Google. I understand. Okay, got it.
Okay.
Got it.
Okay, how else can you get out? I've just mentioned it.
So then the bowler can knock over one of the wickets and get you out.
Correct.
Yeah.
There are other dismissals as well, but they're a bit obscure. We won't talk about them now. Great. That's exactly right. Very good. We'll show more of the graphics later. I wanted to talk to you first, guys. I didn't want to show you with graphics. So the reality is you have other ways of getting out. There are other ways of getting out, which there's quite a list of them. We won't go into the detail too much just yet, but there are other ways you can get out. Handling the ball or obstructing a fielder, doing certain things that you shouldn't be doing that we won't get into now, but they're the basics which we just went through today. And that's enough for now. We'll get into more details as we go along.
Cool.
So, and again, Shivam Shah is talking about the lines on the pitch. They have the pitch is painted. A man comes out there with a paint, like a paintbrush, and he has
or a woman
during the match. He's painting these lines because what was that?
Or a woman could paint the lines too.
Absolutely, and many of the subcontinent countries, there are only women that are out there doing it. It's quite interesting. Could be anybody.
Cricket is growing in popularity for women too, right?
Well, as you know very well, Jim, because you know some of the players that play internationally personally, like Shapali Rurakoti, you know her. So anyway, that's in a nutshell. More things though we need to talk about. Okay, so two batters are out there, a person gets out, a new batter comes in, the other person stays there, he doesn't go, so he stays there. So eventually we go through all the players, you take 10 dismissals, we call it, 10 outs. That means one batter is likely to be not out of the 11. So 10 out is all out. That 11th person is not out because, of course, there's two batters. If you lose the last one, there's only one left. They can't function. So they're all out.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Wait, say that again.
I mean,
you have 11 players.
Right.
2 going out initially. At the end, if you're 9 down, that means 9 people are out, and there are 2 left, the 2 in the middle.
mm-hmm.
All it takes is one of those last 2 to get out, and then they're
That's
all
it.
out.
They're all out. So you can't, because you can't have one batsman by himself.
No. There are versions of that game that are floating around, but we're not talking about that today. So that's effectively happened. So an innings is all 10 players out of the 11 being dismissed, and that's an innings. You could, though, only lose 2 people, but have scored so many runs, you've done enough, and you then declare not bat anymore because you've scored enough runs.
Yeah.
And the opposition does the same. And it's a matter of one team getting a total of, say, 250, the other team trying to then chase that down to be more than that by 251, and they win the match.
So then if this is just like a one-day thing where there's just one inning, right?
Yeah.
Is it better to go first or last then? Like, do they do like a coin flip and like decide or?
It's a great question because in fact it is based on a coin flip. In fact, some of the games they flip the bat too, which is a rather unusual way of doing it, but they normally flip a coin. And tactically, depending on what type of wicket it is, like if you're playing at night, there might be what they call dew, might be wet, might be harder to bat second, so you might want to bat first. If it's a 5-day test match, the longer version, where they bat twice, teams very often want to bat first. There's an advantage in doing that.
Do they test the bats before they go into play?
They're not too big
or anything, or like in the United States, baseball had a big issue with court bats.
Well, we had once a steel bat that Dennis Lilly, a very famous player, used. There are limitations to sizes of bats, weights. It depends on the person. You can have heavier bats, lighter bats. There are certain dimensions of a bat, yes.
But does the referee, or is there an inspector before an international match? Or
that's a great question. That's a great question. Well, that's a very good question, because I'm not exactly sure how officious they are about that, whether they actually go and look at the bat before the person gets in the field. I think it's just a given that they have the right equipment.
Really?
Well, I shouldn't say that. There probably is things that I'm not aware of at the highest level that they actually check the bat. But I've played a lot of cricket games in my life, and no one's physically came and looked at the bat and weighed it to make sure it's within a certain weight scale. No. In fact, I think the dimensions of the bat are relevant, but in terms of the and the thickness and general length, but the weight can vary. You can have people who like light bats or heavy bats. A bigger man wants a heavier bat. It's possible, or vice versa for that matter. So it's not as stringent as what you think. And it's very interesting because bat manufacturers have got restrictions on what they can do. So they're not going to make a bat that's out of those proportions, because one, it won't sell, and two, it's illegal, effectively. So it generally doesn't happen.
What's the longest time then that someone's been at bat? Like, if all those like factors are involved to actually create an out, you could, I mean, I know anecdotally you can be up there for a really long time and keep swinging.
In the old days, I'm talking very old days, there was something called timeless cricket. At the moment, the maximum you can play is a certain amount of overs over 5 days. It's the general maximum. They used to have a rest day and they made a sixth day, but in some of the cases they had limitless days. You played until the game resolved itself.
That's crazy.
So that was, and they used to be on what they call uncovered wickets, which meant if it rained, the ground got wet and it was affected. There was no cover to protect it. Quite incredible. I mean, people like Sir Donald Bradman played in an era where I'm sure he was involved for a period where there was a timeless match, and there was also a period where there was uncovered wickets, and he was also the best player in the world. Absolutely.
What years did Bradman play?
From 1928 to 48, and he played for 20 years. World War II was in the middle of it. He also didn't play that many games, though. He played for a long time, but he didn't play that many games. But his batting average, like, imagine a baseball player, like, say, Babe Ruth, is probably the equivalent of a Don Bradman. Babe Ruth, say he had an average of scoring a home run every time he batted. Well, Don Bradman had a batting average of 99.94, virtually 100, which is a century, and that's like the benchmark of a great innings. He was only 0.06 below perfection.
Yeah. But if you're like, if I can bat for hours and hours, then like, what's the longest like single batting?
Well, you could, and it won't happen, because why would you do it unless you wanted to draw the match? You could bat for the whole 5 days if you really wanted to. You probably won't last that long, but technically you could bat for the whole 5 days if it's a test match. If it's a test match, the double innings match I'm talking about.
What about one-day match?
Okay, one-day matches, a team bats for what they call, it's either 20 overs or 50 overs. Now, an over is when you throw the ball, one bowler throws the ball 6 times from one end. Those 6 deliveries or bowls, or pitches in your case, in America, that makes 6 balls make 1 over. So effectively, in a 50-over match, you could have 300 balls.
So there's a cap. So they cap it.
In that version of the game,
bowler throws 6 bowls, and that's 1 over. And then after he's done, the bowler on the other side throws it back the other way.
Correct. And in 50-over matches, it's generally one bowler can only bowl 10 overs, I think it is. If it's different lengths, it's less. So 40 might be 8. So one bowler can't bowl 25 overs from one end if he's the best. He can't do that. He usually has a limit of 10 that he bowls, which is 60 balls. That's the bowler. But the batters, the first 2 batters could bat the entire 50 overs. If they're good enough and they're there, they can bat the entire time. They can be no wickets down for whatever runs, and only the top 2 guys are in. You don't have to bat all the way.
Who is the best Aboriginal cricket player in Australian history?
Oh, in history?
There aren't that many.
There's a man by the name of Archie Jackson, who was back in the very early 1900s, who was a renowned Aboriginal background. In fact, the very first touring side from Australia to England was an Aboriginal side.
Really?
A totally Aboriginal cricket side. There were no, well, how would you call them? The English
European.
They were the only people they were all Aboriginal. It's quite amazing. Back in the 18th century, we had an all Aboriginal team go to England, which nowadays doesn't happen, but then they did, which is quite remarkable. So, so back to the overs. So, a test match, there's usually a limit of about 90 overs in a day, which is actually less than the 50 over, because 50 overs, both teams is 100, correct? That's in a one-day match. Generally in test cricket, it's slightly stretched out. It's 90 overs is generally a minimum. So you would argue roughly 450 over 5 days. There's one other quirk. The last hour of the play of the 5th day is 15 overs. So there's a few quirks, but so that's how it compares. So again, an over is, I mean, a pitcher has no over, does he? A pitcher can pitch for the entire innings, can't he? The one pitcher.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, they don't. They get tired.
Strategically, they don't. But yes, you could have one pitcher do a complete game, right?
Well, we can't have that. We can't have that in cricket. We can't have one bloke doing that. Even if he was the best in the world, he couldn't do that. He has a limit to how long he. Well, no, actually, I'll take that back. In Test cricket, we could have one bowler bowling from one end, yes, but he wouldn't last. He'd be tired. It wouldn't happen. But generally, they have overs, or they call them spells. You have a spell of, say, 5 overs or 6 overs, whatever the captain decides is long enough, and then you come back later for another spell. Okay, so in essence, you have the situation with 50 overs per side for an innings, but you do have some quirks, which we won't go into too much now, but there are things called a no ball, a wide, which actually add an extra delivery onto the innings. So even though you've got 300 balls to bowl, if the bowler does something which he's not supposed to, namely bowls a wide or a no ball, for example, they add an extra ball on. He has to re-deliver that ball, which is a thing you don't want to do because it adds more runs and deliveries for the batsman to hit. So you don't want that to happen. And there's rain, of course, it comes into play. If there's rain conditions and there's restrictions on the game, they have a system where they work out lesser overs and what they need to do. Yeah, which is very complicated, but it's there as well.
And what's the main cricket league? And does each country have their own domestic league, or are there multiple leagues?
They generally have a high-level first-class league, which is like a domestic league, and there might be states.
Like the Premier League, and then there's like lower.
Well, generally we have grades, they call it. First grade, second grade, third grade is domestic level, and you have state level in the case of Australia, or you have county level in the case of England, or in the case of somewhere like Sri Lanka, it's provinces. So they're areas. Like, let's compare it to America. You would have, Californian team, a New York team. But in your case, you have a lot of the time more than one team in a state. We do too, but generally it's the one that runs the state or a county. But there are levels of it, like the top level, and there's lower levels. Yeah, similar situation. So you get the understanding of the word overs. And overs, you bowl an over, that's 6 deliveries.
I lost on the overs, but keep going.
That's right. All right, so you throw a ball once. That's all right. You're doing really well. It's your first time. We're going to get better. You throw the ball once. That's 1 ball, 1 delivery. Same thing.
Okay.
2, 3. You bowl 6. That man or woman has bowled 6 of them. That 6 is called an over.
So think 6 pitches is an over.
Correct. Okay.
And then one day match, one bowler can only bowl 10 overs.
Correct.
In a
So
test match, a bowler can bowl how many overs?
It's pretty much unlimited.
Unlimited. Until their arm falls off.
Well, the captain normally doesn't let them do that. So.
And the elbow can't break. Is that right?
Yeah, well, there is a certain positioning of your arm. You can't bend, you can't chuck or throw ball. That can be deemed to be a no ball, which means an illegal delivery, effectively. And if you bowl enough of them, the umpire, who's like your you call them umpires too, don't you? You got a baseball umpire.
Umpires, yeah.
So look, the baseball and cricket have got a lot of similarities. You've got umpires, so have we. You've got outs, so have we. You've got runs, so have we. We've got innings as well. So there are a lot of word comparisons, and I'm going to talk more about that later, where cricket didn't come before baseball as an evolution. No, they were kind of decided around the same time. They were once a game called rounders, all versions of bat and ball type games that existed, and they morphed into cricket, probably first, and then eventually baseball became a sport, which is played around the world, but probably became more famous in America. But they all came from England. There's no doubt about it. Cricket certainly came from England.
Does
Baseball.
Russell Crowe own a cricket team in Australia?
Well,
or just a rugby team?
He owns a rugby league team called Sasseney Rabbitohs.
And you're a fan of the Rabbitohs, aren't
I'm
you?
a huge fan of the Rabbitohs. I'm the same age as Russell Crowe, probably look like him. So I was just looking. I've got two types of hats here. That's a cricket hat.
Yeah, where's your Dodger hat?
I've got my LA Dodgers hat right there.
Ah, there you go.
That was
That's right. That was pre-pandemic hat.
pre-pandemic, exactly. So this is a MCC. It's an M within a C and a C. It's Marleybone Cricket Club. Now, Marleybone Cricket Club is a very famous club. It's part of the ground which is at Lord's, which is probably the most famous cricket ground in the world in terms of history. And this, of course, you know very well. It's the LA Dodgers hat from LA Dodgers Stadium, your home ground, which I went to a game. I went and saw LA Dodgers versus New York Yankees. I remember that with my son. It was great.
And then remember the taxi driver. He wanted to drop you off at the bottom, but you made him drive you to the front entrance.
It was a long way from the bottom.
It's a wise man. That's a wise decision.
Now, Sarprakash Bahara is asking for me to explain another format, the T20 format. T being 2020, T for 20 and the number 20. I've mentioned to you that the long version, the 5 days, which involves two teams batting twice, the 50 overs, which is 56 ball overs, both sides. There's a smaller version called T20, which means 2020. So as opposed to 50 overs, they bowl 20 overs, 120 deliveries each. So it's a lot faster.
Is it a half-day match?
Well, it happens very often. In fact, there's been many World Cups around it. It's the newest version of the sport. I'm trying to think when it came into play, it would have been probably into prominence only as little as 20 years ago, maybe close to 30 years ago. It's only been in prominence for a fairly short while. The 50 over game's been around for quite a while, and Test cricket's been around for centuries. So,
is there a country that's better at the T20 format than another?
India's probably the best, I would argue, with England. They're probably the two of the best at the moment. Australia's pretty good too. It's probably those three countries are the best three. New Zealand's up there as well. There was a World Cup only recently in England, and that was in 2019. I went to that final between New Zealand and England. It was an amazing game. But India are well known for being they have a tournament called the IPL, the Indian Premier League, but it's a T20 format, the shorter version. And that is a very financially successful competition. Players get paid millions for only 6 weeks, 2 months.
So why was the West Indies so good at one point in history and now they're not?
That's a great question. I would still argue they are very good. A lot of them are playing basketball in America. A lot of them have gone to athletics, like Jamaica, for example. They're all like Usain Bolts. They win 400-meter races. They're more into the Olympics and the sports there at Barbados as well. It's such a diverse place. There are so many islands in the Caribbean. The Leeward and the Windward Islands, they've got numbers of islands with it. They're actually countries, by the way. They're not. We've got to not forget when they had the team West Indies, they're
Right.
bringing together a dozen or more countries.
But didn't they have one bowler that was very dominant when they won?
One, they had about 4 or 5. That's why they were
Oh,
so
they did.
dominant.
Okay.
They had a quartet of incredible bowlers that were all very fast, and they had probably the best batter in the world at the time, Viv Richards, who he's an amazing man. He's Mr. Cool. His brother Mervyn Richards has been on my show. You've seen in previous episodes his brother's very often on the show. But Viv Richards was a legend, and he had a lot of other players around him that were legends as well.
And so Sri Lanka, when I was traveling in Australia when we met in 1996, that's the only time they've ever won the World Cup.
Correct.
And why is it that's the only time they've ever won it?
Again, a good question. They had everything go their way. Everything went their way. They were not meant to win that World Cup.
Right?
Australia was meant to win that, but Sri Lanka did a great job, and they made it, and they won it. They've gone very close since. I think they've been in quite a few finals, as a matter of fact. They've actually been in finals before. They could have won again.
So is the World Cup a one-day test, or is that a 5-day? And then the thing that you've talked about,
World Championship.
No. What's the other big one? The Ashes.
That's England.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, well, that's just England and Australia.
England and Australia.
Oh, okay.
And that's 5 test matches, 5 so-called 5-day test matches, and they're going to play that over the summer here in Australia. They played also in England. That's the Ashes. It was based on a little urn which they burnt the bales from the stumps into a little trophy, and it became the Ashes.
Okay. The Ashes trophy is only this big, right?
Correct. So
it was like a dig in Australia, right?
See, they have the World Cup, the T20 format. They have the World Cup for the 50-over format.
Oh, they have multiple World Cups.
Yeah, 2 World Cups. They also have a newly created World Test Championship, which is about to happen, where teams have to qualify, and it's only the top 2 teams. There's no one else. So it's like a final.
So it's a big deal when Australia gets the Ashes because it was a joke on them, and then when they hold it, the joke's on England.
Yeah, a bit scratchy. We're losing a little bit. So what did you say?
I said it's a big deal when Australia wins the Ashes because the origin of it was kind of a joke on them. Oh, you're freezing. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So again, you have a T20 World Cup. You have a 50-over. Well, they call it ODI, one-day international. Is the term given to that. But it's also called 50 overs. Those 2 World Cups. And now this newly formed World Test Championship, where all these points that lead up to 2 teams playing against each other in July at Lords, and New Zealand have qualified already. And what's happening now between India and England is the series going on. India have to win 3-1 to get through, or England have to win 3-1 to get through. If they have a 2-all draw, then Australia jump over them. So I can't work out how that's possible, but that's what happens.
Yeah.
That's a bit important. So the World Test Championship is coming. So we've got a lot of people asking questions.
I think you're lagging a bit, Norman.
That's Sam Dash, Emma saying, hey, you're a fantastic talking host. Keep up. Do travel when you're. I certainly want to, guys.
There's a little bit of.
Yeah. So is it just us now?
Are we live? Jim and Julie on Cricket.
Wait, is it just us, or did the whole thing stop?
Audio isn't clear.
I'm looking for
I think
chat.
we're still here.
Everyone can see and hear us.
What is the most famous Australia-New Zealand cricket championship?
Hey,
game?
we've taken over Ion Cricket.
Yes.
I think we're suitable. We're excellent.
I'm back, guys. I'm back.
Okay.
I just
We were hosting for you.
I had a
Norm,
glitch, one phone can't.
We were Jim and Julie on Cricket with Jim and Julie on Cricket.
That was concerning because you could say a lot of fibs there, but you're back on, so that's good. Everything fine?
A lot of people wanted us to lead the show after you left. And we said, no, Norman is the leader. Don't mutiny.
Oh, I can just imagine leaving you two alone with my viewers. So Dr. A. Ramachandran Ray has told you, Jim, finish that potato chip, Jim.
Oh, it's cracker.
Finish it.
Well, I guess
It's
we call
by a doctor, no less.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
We have a little cheese, crackers, and wine. That's what we've been nibbling on.
That's okay. So
Yeah,
there's some
but
people
you-
saying that America needs 30 years to catch up to the world. Well,
That's fair.
I
In
don't know,
cricket, that
because
seems
they've got such-
reasonable.
a team like, I'll give you an example, Oman, which is near the United Arab Emirates, have got a population of 4 million. Okay, 3 million are expats, effectively from India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka. They are now in the top, I think, 20 teams and are pushing for the top 15, and they could well be a leading test team given time. That happened really quickly. So America have a lot of expats that are of great standard from India, every country you can imagine, including the West Indies, even Australia, that can qualify to be in that team, and they could probably get it up to speed a lot quicker than 30 years. I'll tell you now.
We don't even have a national cricket team.
And actually, the doctor's also telling, I think he's giving you a medical report, Julie. He's saying that you're also sipping wine as well, and you're going slightly flushed in the face. And that's called being slightly inebriated. Is that what the term is? I think.
I'm a professional. I'm not inebriated yet.
Well,
I
just
think
to
it
let
could
you
be
know, can I tell people, Julie, what you do? You're a human resource head for one of the largest companies in the world for utilities.
Video games, but I stopped doing that, Norm.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I know. I started my own little company.
Ooh.
But
what was the name? What was the name of the company you worked for? It was very common.
I worked for Blizzard Entertainment
The Blizzard
for a very long time.
Like
Blizzard
World of
makes World of Warcraft, Overwatch, Diablo,
Starcraft.
StarCraft, Heroes of the Storm, Hearthstone. Super fun games.
Julie was instrumental in the creation of Overwatch.
That's not true.
Yes, she was.
Well, we're going to say that for the record that you are Miss Blizzard. Okay. All right.
Sure.
And her new company is called Leadership Enthusiast.
Thanks, honey. Anyway,
So
I'm still building it.
That has nothing to do with cricket.
Jim's got a fair handle, I think. But Julie, do you have a slightly better understanding about cricket after this hour together?
Yes. Here's a question I have before we go further.
Right.
As a spectator, what's my experience when I go? Like when we can travel again, Norman, and Jim and I come to Australia, and you're gonna take us to a cricket game. Can I like have a beer and like some chips and I'm enjoying is it kind of the same experience, or from being in the stadium, is that a different experience?
No, it's almost the same,
Pretty
really. We have hot dogs, chips, burgers, whatever. If it's at a more aristocratic setting where there's parkland and it's not a major stadium like there is in baseball, where you have a country setting like in England, it's sandwiches, scones, tea. It's very traditional from that perspective.
What's the most popular spectator food at a cricket match?
Guys,
Depends
can you
where
put
you're
your volume needs to go up. I think this.
What is the most popular spectator food at a cricket match? And does it differ between a test match and a one-day match?
Well, the food would depend on what country you're in.
Well, if it's played in England, at Lord's, it certainly is different. We have the normal food, but they have a lot of very 5-star sit-down type meals. They have a lot of sandwiches and champagne in certain areas. They have little corporate and boxes and suites. They have an outer area, which is a lawn, not unlike Wimbledon, with your what do they have? They have strawberries and cream type scenarios and sandwiches. That's more aristocratic. But at the normal stadiums, it's just general food, burgers, chips, whatever. But in India, though, you'll get an incredible slice of Indian food available as well, which is very significant. In Sri Lanka, you'll have, as you would know, they used to have pineapple with like a spice on it, like a chili on the pineapple, and we'll eat it. And that was traditional of Sri Lanka. India has certain other quirks very similar to that. New Zealand would too, and South Africa. So there are quirks national Like in West Indies, the best example at an Antigua recreational ground, which is in Antigua, of course. They have beef jerky. They have a beef jerky stall and grits and incredible food that's very much like Southern American food in a way. It's very, very unique again. So there is cultural changes, certainly.
Yeah.
So biryani in India, for example, have biryani available. The chips, fries, sandwiches, beer, that's a normal thing we get around all around. In Hong Kong, for example, which plays cricket, Singapore, they always have an Asian dish that they
would be. Are there
I've been
any?
lucky enough to travel to a lot of these countries to play cricket, and it's been an outrageous. South Africa was amazing. The wildlife, as in wildebeest meats and various deer steaks, whatever. It was just amazing. So yeah, there certainly is there is a similarity yet a difference depending on the culture, of course. But again,
and what's a game coming up that we should try and watch? Like now that I know enough to be dangerous about cricket.
Okay, well,
what should I watch?
India play England at a brand new stadium in a place called Ahmedabad, Motera Stadium. It fits 110 to 120,000 people. It's brand new. That's the third test, which will be a 5-day version of the test. That starts on the 23rd, our time, which is more or less the 22nd, I think, on your time, depending on time of day. And that's between England and India. It's a significant match because both teams are 1-1. They're 1-1. They've got 2 more games to go. So they're very significant matches. Both teams can't have a 2-2 draw because if they have a 2-2 draw, they both don't make this World Test Championship. So one team has to be victorious with a 3-1 victory, which means they need to win the last 2 matches.
I just pulled up ranking the world's top 25 cricket grounds, stadiums, and venues.
23.
Number 25 is HPCA Stadium in Dharamshala, India.
Yeah, that's northern India. That's a backdrop of the Himalayas. It's amazing.
Dharamshala.
Damn, that's 1 a.m. our time. I just looked at the India.
Can any of the viewers guess the capacity of Dharamshala or India?
Dharamshala.
HPCA Stadium, what's the capacity?
Well, it won't be anywhere near what this stadium is. It's probably around less than 20,000.
A little bit more than that.
Jim, this is
25,000.
Maybe we're gonna not do that.
Oh, then stop looking at Google, you cheat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I actually do want to watch a cricket match after this, so I can.
Well, you both have a job to do. You're going to be. I'm going to get you on as a guest on one of our other reports. I'm going to have very substantial guests that are ex-cricketers of great note that you can be mixing with.
I don't think that's a good idea, right? Like, won't they be insulted by us not knowing anything?
All right, guys. We've actually gone a full hour, guys. We've done very well. We've done fantastically. So you guys have got homework to do. You need to find out. You need to watch a couple of videos I've sent you. We'll have more of a physical. We'll get. Unfortunately, I might bring out an old video of Jim and I playing cricket in America with his cricket gear on. But this was more of a general chat, guys. I think it was very interesting because even though people know cricket out there in the world of cricket, you still hear things that you may need to clarify, and you do get them from discussions like this. And I think we haven't covered all the bases. We haven't talked about no balls and wides and a number of other issues, which I didn't want to talk about too much. A wide, of course, is a delivery which is outside of the region of where a person can hit, and there's certain areas of the pitch, and an umpire puts his hands out wide, and it calls a wide, which means extra delivery, an extra bowl, and you get 1 run for that as well, potentially more. Okay. We're gonna be more interactive, guys. Well, thank you very much, guys. You've been fantastic. I want all my viewers to thank both Jim and Julie. I think if Julie wasn't there, Jim may have been a little bit more cheeky. I'm not sure, but did you behave? Did you, Jim?
You're right. All right, you're right. He might have been. No, he's still cheeky.
Where do the Calcutta Knight Riders play?
What? You're just testing them?
No, the Calcutta Knight Riders.
Norman,
Where do they
now
play?
he's just poking.
Night
at-
Riders is a TV show in America. We know that. All right.
What
guys,
is
thank
their
you very much.
stadium
Thanks, everyone.
called?
It's been great.
Something
I hope the
Garden.
guests enjoyed you. Everyone's thanking you and Julie. Thank you, guys. Again, this is Norman.
Thank you, everybody.
So you guys stay there. Don't go anywhere. But Norman Koch
Okay.
saying goodbye to my viewers. Thank you yet again.
Bye,
We'll see you
everyone.
tonight and tomorrow night. We're going to be talking about the test match, the third test match. I'll supply with some of the press conference. So enjoy your time, guys. Thank you very much. This is Norman Kochnick from Eyes on Cricket with Norman Kochnick. Please view, like, and share the posts. And don't forget to interact, make comments, provide us feedback, ask us questions, and subscribe and press that notification bell. And you'll get more of that from me and our lovely panel of guests like Julie and Jim. So thank you all. Goodbye.
Bye.
Au revoir.